It's Ann Coulter. So Ann, thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thanks for having me. That was a fantastic opening monologue. I too am a fan of yours. I'm going to make a point of disagreeing with you so that it will be fun. You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American Black. Can't say that about them. That's derogatory. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during. In fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
It's funny how Ann Coulter can look Vivek in the face and basically say, even though I like your ideas even more than other candidates, I wouldn't vote for you because you're Indian. According to Vivek's Wikipedia page, he was born in Cincinnati, which is in Ohio, which is in the United States. And if you're doing the math, that would make him American. Now, there are good reasons not to vote for Vivek. Because you're Indian wouldn't be one of them. Unless he was actually from India, making him a non-citizen, thus ineligible to run, but I digress. I wonder, had he been white with the same ideas, would she then vote for him? I think we all know the answer to that. But we aren't here to discuss that stupid thing she said. We're here to discuss the other stupid thing she said in this small clip. The dig at blacks for not being able to say blacks are well-spoken or articulate. Her white supremacy is plain to see. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be willing to bet that she was doing commentary on what she views as the absurdity of wokeness, wherein a compliment can be deemed as inappropriate. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I'd be willing to bet. White supremacy affords certain mindsets. Not only can you be oblivious to a dark person who doesn't have a tan, who's interviewing you, citizenry, it also affords you the luxury of being oblivious to history when it comes to race. In the system of white supremacy, there are stereotypes, usually negative, about non-whites. For example, as a thought experiment, if you were to think of stereotypes for white people, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with the ones that infer a genetic inferiority. However, when it comes to stereotypes about non-whites, blacks in particular, we've all most likely heard the ones regarding intellect. That's because since this country's inception, we've lived in a system of white supremacy. In the system of white supremacy, there's an expectation of how non-whites act, behave, or even speak, and it usually isn't flattering. This belief stems from somewhere. Listen to one of the so-called forefathers of the U.S. describe blacks.
I advance it, therefore, as a suspicion only that the blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowments both of body and mind. Comparing them, the blacks, by their faculties of memory, reason, and imagination, it appears to me that in memory they are equal to the whites, in reason much inferior, as I think one could scarcely be found capable of tracing and comprehending the investigations of Euclid, and in imagination they are dull, tasteless, and anomalous.
Well, that was rude, but did you hear the part about inferior mentally? This ideology turned into a mindset that's been sewn into the fabric of our nation. So if someone were to think that blacks are inferior mentally, what would one expect to hear when they hear a black person speak? I'll give you an example of what I mean. Remember a few years ago when Ted Williams became an internet sensation because his voice sounded like a radio announcer?
Hi, Ted Williams here, and you're watching Inside Edition with Deborah Norville.
The man with the golden voice is back. Ted Williams became an overnight sensation when he was found homeless on the streets of Columbus, Ohio.
We'll be back with more right after these words.
He looked like a lot of homeless people until he spoke.
And don't forget, tomorrow morning is your chance to win a pair of tickets to see this man live in concert.
Oh, that voice.
Thank you so much.
That was 5 years ago. Today, we're happy to report Ted is doing great.
Good morning, Inside Edition. Welcome to the Golden Voice Show.
When the video came out, it went viral because we don't expect that voice from a homeless person. I mean, he sounds like a radio announcer. Now, if we heard that same voice on the radio, there would be no viral videos. Inside Edition wouldn't pick it up. There would be no makeovers. It would be what we would expect if we heard it on the radio. Expectations can color how we view situations, outcomes, and yes, even people. Another example is former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly when he went to an all-black restaurant seemingly for the first time.
You know, I was up in Harlem a few weeks ago, and I actually had dinner with Al Sharpton, who is a very, very interesting guy, and he comes on a Factor a lot, and then I treated him to dinner because he's made himself available to us, and I felt that I wanted to take him up there, and we went to Sylvia's, a very famous restaurant in Harlem. I had a great time. And all the people up there tremendously respectful. They all watched the Factor. You know, when Sharpton and I walked in, it was like big commotion and everything, but everybody was very nice. And I couldn't get over the fact that there was no difference between Sylvia's restaurant and any other restaurant in New York City. I mean, it was exactly the same, even though it's run by blacks, primarily black patronship. It was the same.
Bill O'Reilly, when he went to the all-black restaurant in Harlem, he was expecting something different than what he got. This is what he was expecting.
And the blacks were well-dressed, and she came out, Anita Baker came out and said, look, this is a show for the family. We're not going to have any profanity here. We're not going to do any rapping here. The band was excellent, but they were dressed in tuxedos. And, you know, this is what white America doesn't know, particularly people who don't have a lot of interaction with black Americans. They think that the culture is dominated by Twista, Ludacris, and Snoop Dogg.
Now ask yourself, why was he expecting that? To answer the question from before, if someone holds to the mindset of Thomas Jefferson, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, that blacks are inferior mentally, then one would expect to hear a mentally inferior person struggle with sentence structure and say syntax. However, when a black person who sounds equal to what you'd expect from a white person and doesn't struggle with either sentence structure or syntax, that's when you get the, oh wow, you're so articulate. The surprise comes from the expectation not meeting the reality. The same with Bill O'Reilly's surprise. It was the low expectations, either consciously or subconsciously, based on race. That's why when a black person speaks articulately, given the expectation of the system of white supremacy, there's an element of surprise.